Hello, and welcome to the League of Women Voters Candidate Forums for the Open Forum for State Office. My name is Liza Holland, and I am a member of the non-partisan League of Women Voters, and I'll be serving as moderator for this forum for candidates. This forum is unique because it is something that we have constructed because of other opponents that are refusing to participate in forums. So we want to thank our candidates here today very much for being willing to inform the voters about their positions. And if you're wondering why the opponents are not here, it's because they declined or refused to answer. So extra thanks for that. The League of Women Voters and Civic Lex are sponsors of the forum today, and questions have been drawn both from the League, from Civic Lex, and from the public. The forum will be available later on the League website at lwvlexington.com, on YouTube, and on Civic Lex, and eventually on vote411.org. We have 4 candidates represented in this open forum. They are Kiana Fields, Rory Houlihan, Adam Moore, and Cherlynn Stevenson. In order to give the candidates a fair chance to be heard, we have randomly drawn via random.org for the order of opening remarks and questions, and a second time for the order of closing remarks. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to introduce themselves, 60 seconds to answer questions, and 60 seconds for closing remarks. We will use a second drawing for the order of closing remarks. So at this point, we will begin with opening comments, and the candidates will go in the order of the first drawing. Mr. Moore, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you, Liza. My name is Adam Moore. I'm a family man, combat veteran, and small business owner running to represent the people of Kentucky's 45th House District, a district that Governor Beshear won by more than 4,000 votes last fall, and I'm very proud to have his endorsement this year in this race. We're knocking on doors, we're holding events, we're hosting community town halls, everything we possibly can to get our message out to the voters. The message that we are sick and tired of divisive politics, of politicians who care more about culture wars than issues impacting everyday Kentuckians. Our campaign is centered around working families because efforts to support Kentucky's working families support all of us, from our children to our elders and everyone in between. Issues like lowering the cost of living, fully funding public education, improving healthcare access, and protecting our personal freedoms, including women's reproductive rights. I'm excited to serve our state by supporting Kentucky's working families and everyone who calls Kentucky home.
Thank you so much. Ms. Stevenson.
I am State Representative Cherlynn Stevenson. I have been serving Kentucky's 88th District since 2019, and it has been an absolute honor to represent those folks in Fayette and Scott counties over the last 6 years. I have loved standing in partnership with Governor Beshear to do good things for Kentuckians and to move our Commonwealth forward. We are working on things and have been seeing progress in areas like ensuring that healthcare is more affordable, trying to protect medical freedom, protecting public dollars for public schools, building an economy that works for everyone, investing in safer communities, advancing our agriculture industries, and more. So I look forward to discussing the issues today that you bring forward, and hope that everyone has a good forum. And we just thank you all so much for giving us this time.
Thank you so much. Ms. Fields.
Thank you all so much for allowing us this space. My name is Kiana Fields, and I'm running for Kentucky State Senate here in District 17. So that is all of Scott County, Grant County, and parts of Kenton, and now the northwest part of Fayette County. And we also saw our governor win this district. I decided to step up as an educator with almost a decade's worth of experience on the post-secondary level because I saw an opportunity to serve my community. I was born and raised here in Scott County, and as an educator who helps to develop our workforce, I have recognized and seen just the challenges that are coming up ahead here in our Commonwealth. And I firmly believe that we have to create policies that meet people where they are and that helps to improve just the overall thriving of our Commonwealth. Our platform is looking at hope that means something. So looking at healthcare, looking at opportunities with and up and down our district, looking at finding ways to create opportunities for all Kentuckians to prosper. And as an educator, I firmly believe in protecting public schools, and I look forward to delving a little bit deeper.
Thank you so much. Mr. Houlihan.
My name is Rory Houlihan, and I am a candidate for the 73rd District, which is Clark County and the southern part of Fayette County. Let's see. I was married with my wife, Terry, for 35 years, which is actually a blessing. She almost died on January 3rd. I have 26 years at Lowe's in Winchester. I have been serving Winchester in this capacity and as a kids build and grow captain for 26 years. And I look forward to serving you very well. One of the reasons why I'm running, I have worked corporate and military flight line for some 10 years. You cannot wait for a issue to come. You have to get on it right away. I coach soccer at U8 and U14 levels. I
Thank you,
enjoy
Mr.
challenges.
Houlihan. I appreciate that so very much. Thank you.
Not what I
Ms.
wanted.
Stevenson, you will take this first question first.
Okay.
Broadly, what do you see as the single most important issue facing your district, and what is your plan to address the issue?
So right now, one of the biggest issues that my district has let me know that they are concerned about, honestly, is the fact that women do not have access to abortion care right now. People are very upset. They believe that we should 100% have exceptions. Life of the mother, I hear that over and over. So the fact that we are in a total ban right now it is deeply upsetting to my district, and we are fighting. Our caucus keeps filing bills, and we are trying to be great advocates for that in the legislature, and a lot of that is going to depend on us getting more and more advocates to the Capitol, more advocates in the General Assembly. And as our caucus chair, I am working very hard on that. Again, it's super important to all of the women here to be able to access health care on their terms and their families' terms.
Thank you. Ms. Fields.
So one of the biggest issues that I'm seeing both on the doors and through various events is the cost of living. So we have a very unique part of our district where we have almost 3 counties that are thriving and experiencing growth, when we have one county that is entering into a little bit of depression in terms of growth, and they're smushed in between. And so really the cost of living, some folks who have been in the district for their whole lives are having to make the hard decision of how long can I stay? What can I do in order just to live and get my basic needs met? And so that is something that is critical for us to come up with a plan with as we're entering into the potential next general session, is to look at how do we create opportunities, both from economic opportunities in terms of investing in high paying jobs within the district and across the district, to address that key point of folks are worried about how do they stay in the place that they grew up and they have close ties to.
Thank you. Mr. Houlihan.
One of the things that came up just recently was one of our workers here, 20-some, petite young lady, had to go quit her job at Lowe's because of the fact that her pregnancy wasn't a normal pregnancy. She had to go all the way up to Ohio to get treated. And because of that, she had to quit her job at Lowe's. We have Ryan Dotson and the Republicans did a little known thing, or really not little known thing. They basically said 5 weeks is viability. According to her doctors, it's not 5th week, it is 8 months, because if the baby can't eat, it can't survive. So that's when viability actually starts. And from basically 7 months, both the baby and the mother are in danger. And that's not pro-life.
Absolutely. Thank you. Mr. Moore.
Yes, like Kiana, the thing I hear most at the doors is the economy and cost of living. So we've actually put a lot of work into trying to find things that would help our constituents with that. Number one, lowering the cost of childcare by establishing universal pre-K for any child across Kentucky, and then also all-day kindergarten.
I'm still
Lowering the
trying.
cost of utilities, repealing the state law that forces utility companies to continue operating their old and inefficient coal-fired power plants instead of allowing them to use cheaper forms of energy like natural gas and renewables. Lowering the cost of services by repealing the sales tax on services that are provided by our small businesses like mine. And then also lowering the cost of gas by cutting the state gas tax and repeal the law that automatically raises it whenever the cost of gas also increases. So I'm excited to put some of these into use because I think these are not partisan things. I think these are issues that could work across the aisle to work with the high cost of living that many of our constituents are currently facing.
Thank you so much. Ms. Fields, you will take this next question first. Building on your cost of living and the economy, what specific policies do you support to attract businesses and create jobs in Kentucky, particularly in rural areas?
So I'm a firm believer in diversifying our economy, where we are seeing a lot of great opportunities coming in, specifically for industry. And so I firmly believe in finding ways that we can bring in both industry, protecting our agricultural history, and also finding ways that we can blend different areas. For example, renewable energy. So addressing, as we're thinking about how are we transitioning and trying to create an environment that helps us across different generations. So how do we blend renewable energy and allow that to create jobs, specifically in rural areas, as we are transitioning out of mining? And so I firmly believe in, are there different incentives? Are there different incentives that will help us bring in different industries that helps us to diversify while also protecting and creating pro-ag laws and building those partnerships both in the States and abroad.
Thank you so much. Mr. Houlihan.
If we want to be able to expand our economy, we have to realize that the fossil fuel industry or the fossil fuels are naturally inflationary. If we're looking at $3 a gallon for fracking, which has an input ratio of 1 unit of energy producing 31 units of fracking gasoline, then we have to look down the road when we are dealing with bitumen, and that is going to have 6 units of energy to produce 1 gallon of gas. So if we do that math and we go divide 6 into 31, we get 5. 5 times 3 is $15 a gallon. Okay, how many of you can drive your SUV or your truck at $15 a gallon? How many of you can afford to heat your home, okay, when it's at $15 a gallon? What we're looking at is that we must go and diversify our economy, because if we don't, we'll be facing a inflationary rate that will be unsurpassed.
Thank you so much. Mr. Moore.
Yes, I'd like us to work on modifying our energy infrastructure. So there are a ton of hard workers out there in former coal country, but we know a lot of those coal jobs have left. And I'd like to see if there's opportunities for newer, whether it's renewable or other forms of energy that we can use in those areas where people have grown up providing power for Kentuckians and others in this part of the world as well. Also, speaking of renewable energies, there are companies who want to move to Kentucky, but they can't. They want to be economically and environmentally conscious. And so they want to make sure that a certain amount of the electricity that they're drawing for their companies when they come into any state is going to be provided by renewables. And we are not meeting some of those thresholds. So if we can start modernizing our energy infrastructure, I think it'll bring a lot of our jobs back to rural areas, but also we'll start meeting the thresholds and the benchmarks we need to bring some of these new employers into Kentucky as well.
Thank you. And Ms. Stevenson.
Hi, Kiana was exactly right when she talked about the fact that we need to be able to diversify. We need to be sure that we are cultivating an environment in all of Kentucky, not just Lexington, not just Louisville, not just in the Golden Triangle and Bowling Green, for jobs. We need to be sure that we are creating an environment across our Commonwealth that is attractive to business. Now, I believe that there are absolutely ways to create that environment so we are attractive to business, but we are still being responsible with our workforce. But also, the infrastructure has to be there, and we are working on that. We drew down a lot of federal dollars, so we're working on our roads, we're working on our bridges, we're working on our intranet that is really dependent for in Eastern and Western Kentucky to attract businesses there. We have to be sure that we are keeping our public schools strong and well funded, because we need to be sure that we have an educated workforce to offer these people, as well as a healthy workforce to offer these people. So there's a huge amount of things that's not just about our tax code, but it's about creating an entire environment that makes us attractive to businesses wanting to relocate here.
It is a many-layered project, isn't it? Mr. Houlihan, a question around safety. With the increasing concerns around gun violence, do you believe Kentucky's current gun laws are sufficient, or would you support reforms?
I would support reforms. Okay. Now, that is a dangerous thing to say in my area, but understand, when we create a, what to say, sanctuary city or sanctuary state, we're basically playing the game of three monkeys. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. And that basically allows criminals to buy guns. Now, if you're a gun holder, then who are you going to be targeted? You're going to be the target of these criminals coming to your home. Now, I actually had someone in my home going through my drawers not too long ago. And his answer was, all us dumb hicks have guns, when I confronted him. So I view this as a very personal matter. Okay. So I don't want my wife being afraid of and be feeling as though she must lock all the doors before I go to bed. Okay. And I don't want you folks to be afraid of having somebody come into your home.
Thank you. Yes. Mr. Moore.
Yes, I think it's tragic that gun violence is a leading cause of death for children in the United States of America. As a 39-year-old Army veteran, for veterans under 40, suicide by firearm is the leading cause of death for someone like me as well, and we have to do better. And so one thing that sticks out to me was a bill that was proposed by Senator Westerfield and Senator Yates last year, the CAR bill. I would like to see that go into committee. I would love to be a part of that process as well. I also want to highlight for the viewers a stark contrast between myself and my opponent, Tom Jefferson. He deleted his issues page, but before he did, he said he wanted to expand Kentucky's concealed carry laws and they wanted to eliminate gun-free zones in Kentucky. Now, we already have universal concealed carry in Kentucky for anyone over 21, which means he wants to do concealed carry for teenagers. And gun-free zones, that's places like Rupp Arena, that's UK's college campus. What he says is just downright dangerous for Kentuckians and our families.
Thank you. Ms. Stevenson.
I think that there are absolutely a lot of common sense measures that can be bipartisan. For instance, this is not something we're not looking to make sweeping change. We are not looking to take everyone's gun. I'm a Mountain Democrat. I grew up around guns, have a gun. It's totally fine. I don't want to get rid of them, but I think that there are common sense measures that we could take. For instance, Representative Rachel Roberts just this past session filed a bill to make gun locks and trigger safety locks and safe storage tax-free, just because that is an incentive for people to purchase those things. So we just need to be sure that, especially around children, because it is now the leading cause of death, it has surpassed car accidents. There are just some safety measures that we can put in place easily that are common sense, that have bipartisan support, that can make us a little bit safer with firearms.
Thank you. Ms. Fields.
Similar to Representative Stevenson, I firmly believe that two truths can occupy the same space. You can absolutely be a gun owner and also come to it with understanding that students are having at younger ages having to do active shooter drills in ways that they hadn't had to do a decade ago. We are also experiencing significant mental health crises that has only exacerbated itself since COVID. So I am a firm believer in which you can protect your Second Amendment right, but also find ways to make gun education more accessible, that you can account for mental health and really reinforcing some of the things that are just basic. That for me is super important given where we are of we do need reform. And that doesn't mean that it's taking guns away. It just means how do we come to the table together to make sure that we are creating a safe environment for generations to come, and also teaching future gun owners how to be safe with guns.
Thank you so much. Mr. Moore, you'll take this next question first. Building upon your discussion about renewables, how do you see Kentucky moving forward to address climate change?
I believe that climate change is a non-starter. I believe it's been politicized too much, unfortunately. But I do like to talk about sustainability. We all want clean air, clean water, clean land, not just for ourselves, but for our children and for our grandchildren. I see that an all of the above energy strategy for Kentucky's future, and caring about sustainability and developing more sustainable energy practices, more sustainable infrastructure as well. Now, as we start to revolutionize things, I talked about renewable energy earlier. I think as we look to the future and promoting that all of the above energy portfolio, we can create thousands of new jobs, of good paying jobs, and we will incentivize more businesses to come into Kentucky, but we need to have that infrastructure first. So I do think that renewable energy will help us sustain our beautiful environment we have here, but also bring more good paying jobs into our state as well. And by extension, that will help with the climate.
Thank you. Ms. Stevenson.
Coming from the coal fields of Eastern Kentucky, I definitely have seen the damage that can be done with fossil fuels, but I also know that Kentucky is built on a culture of working in coal, and I think that a lot of people who are trying to tell everybody that all the coal jobs need to come back are feeding our people a line of bull, let's be honest, because all of the easily mineable seams are gone, and they have been gone. So now what we have is really deep. It is very expensive to get to, and it is not as financially smart to use that anymore. So we do need to diversify. All of those abandoned coal fields are now ripe for solar panels. I know I've seen some studies that say that the wind patterns here are not really effective for us, but we've just got to be really smart about it. And I think that this is a place where private industry is going to have to lead the way on this. We just had a long talk about carbon credits and a lot of industries that are leading the way on sustainability in ag yesterday. And I think that's where our change is going to come from.
Thank you. Ms. Fields.
So I believe that this is a multifactorial type of topic where we have incredible research institutions that can continue to help us find innovative ways to switch from our coal-based economy to potential renewables. One of the things that I think is beautiful about Kentucky is that we are known for powering our nation, and that's something that we do not have to go away from, but I think that's something that in these moments we get to lean into. As we continue to see extreme weather patterns come into our state, that gets at a lot of different factors, from security to the infrastructures within our communities to our emergency plans that we do and do not have within our Commonwealth. And so I firmly believe that this is sustainable practices for our environment, and paying attention to our environment is one of those issues that over the next decade is going to be critical for us to really focus on intentional legislation so that we're addressing the needs and security of our Commonwealth.
Thank you. Mr. Houlihan.
Fantastic. I actually sat down with a person with tiny homes, okay? And we were talking about how modular those homes were. They're basically going to be a maximum of 40 feet, 12 feet wide, and about 12 feet high, okay? That's the same height that we can probably put a normal telephone pole or electrical pole, lighting pole at. So we could actually build a basic solar farm above that location and shade the tiny homes so they don't have to take on so much electricity. But if we batted back and forth to butt each other up, then we could put batteries in between them and they would have a clean, efficient, and lower cost electricity along with a economical way of living. And there is a area in my district in Lexington or in Fayette County that would work perfectly for such a farm.
Marvelous. Thank you so much. Ms. Stevenson, you will take the next question first. Education is a long-term investment, but it is vital to the future of our state. Tell us about what your priorities are in education funding.
Right now, the biggest issue facing education is Amendment 2 that is going to be on the ballot this year. And we are talking about that a lot as we're talking to folks in the district. So Amendment 2 on the ballot, as those of you who don't know, it would not withstand 7 sections of our Constitution to allow the General Assembly to take public tax dollars and give them to private schools. And that would be absolutely detrimental to our public schools. We already know that we are underfunding public schools right now. So we cannot afford to give millions and millions of dollars away to private schools. We are seeing it create huge deficits in budgets in Arizona, in Ohio, in Arkansas, in Florida. We absolutely must defeat this amendment, because if we can find millions and millions of dollars to give to private schools, we could be funding pre-K, we could be giving teachers raises, we could be providing textbooks, teacher PD. There are lots and lots of things that need to be happening with public schools that are not right now, and we cannot afford to let those public tax dollars be going to private schools.
Thank you. Ms. Fields.
So I'm a firm believer. I come from a unique perspective, looking at things from the higher ed side. So I firmly believe in investing in education from pre-K to college age. Specifically, when you see gaps within pre-K through 12, one of the things that we see is those impacts that happens on the university level, as well as for those that are interested in going into the trades. When you look at funding from a higher education perspective, KCTCS is one of those that they're not as well funded as some of our big public institutions. Amendment 2 is dangerous, specifically for rural school districts. When you look at the economic impact that Amendment 2 will and can have, that is something that will devastate our Commonwealth. We're also looking at something that will change the landscape of our education system in ways that will further inequities that exist within our education system. We have schools that are deeply underfunded, that don't have the infrastructure that they need. And so we have to think strategically and intentionally about how do we fix the current system that we have, because it's worth fixing.
Mr. Houlihan.
Ryan Dawson stands for Amendment 2, which is a diversion con under the pretense of choice. So Ryan Dawson and his fellow Republicans can rob our public schools. Their choice is actually a pro-defund to destroy our public schools. We already have choice in private schooling. You just pay for that private school, not the taxpayer. This is not fair for our regular common folks. That's why it's called a common education. It is for us regular folks education fund, and not for the elites fund.
Thank you so much. Mr. Moore.
Education is absolutely the key to unlocking any child's potential here, and that serves a better future for all Kentuckians. You spoke about my priorities as far as funding goes. I think the surest methods to help our children are to provide early education access for all Kentuckians, and ensuring that they have amazing teachers with them in the classroom. So now's the time to catch up on national standards for teacher pay, and also to pilot a universal pre-K program within our state. I think competitive teacher pay is going to keep our best educators here in the Commonwealth, And universal pre-K is going to allow parents to get back to work if they choose to, while their children are able to receive earlier access to reading, social play, learning concepts that will help them to succeed, not just academically, but later in life as well. I also want to look into promoting opportunities for our students to learn outside the classroom. I think it's important that when our students graduate, they don't just have a degree, but they also have the ability to succeed in whatever path they take in life.
Okay, so Ms. Fields, you will take this next question first. We're getting back to your mention about healthcare. What changes would you like to make to the current healthcare system that doesn't seem to be working equally well for all of us?
Healthcare is a passion of mine. Kentucky ranks 41st in terms of health outcomes. And I build that into a couple of things. So one of the things that's a struggle is first access to quality healthcare. So when it comes to being able to access physicians and different specialties, oftentimes what's happening is that there is a 6 month waiting gap for folks. So it's looking at how do we make sure that those that are on Medicaid, that payout system is streamlined, that we are covering the necessary procedures, and is there a way to expand? Specifically looking at child and maternal health care, that is one that is extremely important to me. It is how do we continue to build upon the successes of the Momnibus bill in giving access to doulas and really being innovative in how we address that. We have to look at our workforce development, both in terms of protecting our health professionals, but also in creating a pipeline for individuals. There's quite a few things that we can do legislatively that I can't cover in 60 seconds that I would love to chat a little bit more about.
Mr. Houlihan.
Oh, fantastic at once. Actually, we've had quite a bit of healthcare this year, and the honey bunny. On the 27th, my wife got deadly sick. She went to the emergency room and turned down the going to Louisville. It was just too far away to get treated. I realized that she wasn't going to make it very long. So I actually snuck around her and texted my good friend Cindy, who was the receptionist for the doctor, and got her an appointment the first day that the doctor was back. And he immediately put her in the emergency room. They pulled out some 800 milliliters of fluid out of her lungs. If she didn't have that happen, she would have been dead the next day. I'm truly, because that's what happened to my mom. So I know it would have happened. We've been in and out of doctors' offices and in the hospital several times during this year. I know that good medical help will save people's lives, but I also know that my wife at 71 won't get a liver transplant because she's too old. And so we have to live with that threat of her going downhill real quick, real fast. It's just part and parcel of life of somebody who's older. And our medical system or our insurance system doesn't necessarily work for us older folks. It
So much,
shortens our
because yes,
lives.
indeed, we need to be taking better care of our older folks. Thank you. Appreciate you sharing that story. Mr. Moore.
I'd like to talk about mental health care. I think that was brought to the forefront, especially during the shutdowns we had during the COVID-19 pandemic. As people stayed home, as students stayed home, I think we gained a lot more clarity that this was an issue that was not on the fringes of society, but something that many of us deal with. I think there is a gap between those who need services and the amount of services that are available. And I would like to work on closing that gap that there is in mental health care and coverage for mental health. I like for everyone with mental health or substance use disorder or condition be able to get the care that they need. And absolutely so, whether that means covering all medically necessary treatment or expanding coverage or having more telehealth options available. But there's a gap there I'd love to see addressed. Also, as far as crisis response, Lexington has a paramedicine program here that allows for when someone is having a mental health episode, it's not just police who show up. It is someone who is trained to handle a mental health episode. And I would like to see that expand beyond Lexington as well, because I think anyone in Kentucky could benefit from that or a similar program.
Thank you. Ms. Stevenson, thoughts on healthcare?
Liza, I need 60 hours instead of 60 seconds to talk about this, but I will say I am very proud to have been part of the group that worked for more than a year on the Momnibus bill, the maternal health care bill that we were able to pass this past session. I also was instrumental in getting medical cannabis passed. And so those are two big things that are going to make a difference for patients in Kentucky. But there are so much more that we can do. I have been pushing a bill for a while and talking about an all-payer claims database, which would open up pricing transparency within our healthcare systems. I have filed bills about reducing the cost of medicines, especially for children under the age of 18, EpiPens for free. We need to get rid of gaps in coverage and insurance when somebody moves from job to job. That is not nearly going to break the bank, the COBRA insurance that you can have. We have got to address the provider shortage that we have in rural Kentucky. Again, we could just go on and on. We need mental health parity within our insurance system as well. Lots and lots of thoughts on that. And again, could go on and on for days.
Thank you so much. Yeah, again, multi-layered and complex issues. Mr. Houlihan, you'll take this next question first. What is your stance in investing in infrastructure projects, particularly in expanding broadband access to rural areas in Kentucky?
My 2 years ago, my level of broadband was 250K. Okay, and we just installed fiber optics here, and it's increased enough so that we can actually talk on a Zoom call. Before that, I had to go into the library to have a Zoom call. So as far as enabling businesses out in the peripheral, I am well aware of what that infrastructure means, because I had to close down a business because of the fact that I did not have broadband. I did not have the capability of doing business online. So I know from firsthand that this broadband is a real game changer for us rural folks and for those who are businesses out in the rural, because I have a small store and I would love to promote the products in that small store. And without broadband, that would have been impossible.
Thank you. Mr. Moore, thoughts on
Yes.
infrastructure?
Yes, thank you. I grew up in rural Franklin County. My parents still live there in that house, and it's still you don't get cell phone service there, and the internet options that you have are either very poor or very expensive to get something good. So I know what that's like to be in a rural area with limited broadband. I applaud Governor Beshear and 100% back him that you need broadband access to be competitive in today's current landscape in 2024. Expanding broadband access to rural Kentucky, it's going to be essential for fostering economic growth, improving access to education, to healthcare, which we just spoke about, and of course, bridging that digital divide between urban and rural. So absolutely reliable internet access. It's going to empower our rural communities, hopefully create new job access and enhancing small business capabilities there as well. So I'm 100% on board to fostering that development of new capacity of broadband into rural Kentucky, because I think it can do so much and bridge so many divides that are necessary.
Thank you. Ms. Stevenson?
I think when we're talking about infrastructure overall, yes, broadband is really important. And there was a lot of money that came into the state from the Build Back Better bill that passed during COVID. And I think that COVID exacerbated the problems and really pointed out the problems that we definitely have here, especially in rural Kentucky, as people were trying to work and go to school using broadband and having problems with that. So there has been a federal match come in. We have been able to match some funds from the state level. So a lot of money is being poured into that right now. And hopefully we're focusing on that last mile connection, and that should be better soon. Another big issue is wastewater. There's been a lot of money poured into that, but we need to be sure that everyone has clean and safe drinking water. And as far as roads go, obviously we've been doing a really great job. I'm so proud of Governor Beshear and the leadership that he has shown in completing the Mountain Parkway, in working on 69, down toward Henderson, and also the Brent Spence Bridge. So there's a lot of dollars flowing in. We're putting them to smart use. And I think that we're all going to be better off for it in a very short period of time to come.
Thank you. Ms. Fields.
So we talked about the first kind of priority. Infrastructure in my district is one of those big priorities, specifically here in Scott County. Scott County is the fastest growing county in the state of Kentucky. And so when you have that level of pressure, you also have to look at the infrastructure that exists. This is something that is critical for this district across the board, both making sure that we have the water infrastructure, which is a topic that has come up several times in Scott County. In terms of broadband access, we often focus on rural folks not having it, but I also say that we also have to look at lower income households as well. So even though you might be in a rural, urban area, that doesn't always mean that you have quality access to broadband. And so for me, infrastructure is something that is pivotal as the district continues to grow and as we try to support those pieces of the district that may be struggling and are in a little bit more of a rural area. So this is a big topic that's coming up within the district.
Thank you so much. You all have provided so much rich fodder. I think we could continue this on for days and days. But I do have a final question before we get to closing comments that kind of refers to how government should be done. And I would like your thoughts and solutions on making the government processes at the State House and Senate more transparent. The League has just completed a whole transparency report that found a lot of opportunities for voters are being closed off, and would like to have your thoughts on that and what your solutions would be. We'll start with Mr. Moore.
Yes, thank you. There were some really interesting reports that came back as the history of transparency, or maybe lack thereof, in the state legislature going into the session this past year. But as far as whether or not bills are being rushed to the floor, I would know I was personally really offended by when House Bill 5 passed this last year, that it was a very quick fiscal note of just this bill would have a significant fiscal impact, but there was no actual score attached to it. You had to go to an outside organization, KY Policy, to actually run the numbers and get a fiscal impact statement for what House Bill 5 would actually cost the voters. We need more accountability from our legislators to make sure the public knows about the bill when it goes to committee before it goes to the floor, so they can make their voice heard. Accurate financial scorings of bills like House Bill 5 and others, so that you can't just fund this, or not fund, I'm sorry, you can't just implement this program and just hope that it pays for itself. There's so many ways to improve transparency and accountability that I think, like Cherlynn said, it might take 60 minutes instead of 60 seconds, but it's super duper important. And I hear about that at the doors as well.
Thank you. Ms. Stevenson.
I have been living this for the past 6 years, and I thank the League so much for speaking out about this issue. And we were able to use your information as the very first day of session this year when we fought against the House rules and some changes that were being made. We have seen those rules change every single year, and it has been chipping away at transparency. We should have a definite 3-day posting rule for things to be heard in committee. We should definitely have ample opportunity for legislators and constituents to be able to see changes to a bill if there is a committee sub. We should absolutely have to have time between something coming out of committee and being voted on in the floor. We need to slow down and be much more deliberate, be much more debate about what is happening. Sunshine is the best disinfectant. We always hear that, but it's absolutely true. Rushing things through at the last minute, again, having rules that say this is a rule unless we say it's not anymore, and notwithstanding or being able to make a motion and easily do away with any waiting periods that we needed, things like that. It's just wrong, and it's not good government.
Thank you. Ms. Fields.
Oh, I have a lot of feelings and thoughts on this, a lot of feelings and thoughts. So I concur with both what Representative Stevenson and Adam said, but also looking at when committee agendas are posted, who has access to be able to speak And when you have those big issues that are coming up within the committee, being able to be intentional about who's testifying and not blocking folks from testifying is super important. Also, when I think what we're seeing a lot of coming out of the legislator is not focusing on the issues that actually impact everyday folks. So if there is what we call a cookie cutter bill that is we're seeing across the country, letting us know where your sources for your bills coming from is super important. I think people deserve to know who is trying and who is powering our legislator in ways that we have not been able to see before. Everyday working people don't have time to track down our legislator. It is the job of our legislators to make sure that they're doing the work of the people.
Thank you. Mr. Houlihan.
Well, we had Ryan Dotson in every Republican vote for putting into 511, Section 511 of the Penal Code to prohibit the operation of unmanned aircraft, video and audio recording devices, or photography equipment on or above a concentrated feeding operation or commercial food manufacturing or processing facilities. When you want to jail the whistleblowers and you put that anti-whistleblower legislation up for vote and into our government, that's our food supply, folks. And they're basically letting the folks who want to make our food unsafe get away with it and put those who want to make our food or keep our food safe in jail. That is so deep state. I can't imagine it being in any state's laws, but yet it came on the floor and got voted on almost unanimously by Republicans in the second vote. So we have a real problem on the other side of the aisle. And I hope to correct that by removing at least one of those folks from office coming this November 5th.
Super. Thank you so much. Ms. Stevenson, we are now moving to closing remarks, and you got the first bid on your 60-second closing remarks.
Okay. Again, thank you all so much, and the League of Women Voters, for having us here today and giving us a platform to talk about issues that are really important and are issues that we talk about at the doors with our voters, with our constituents. I think it's an important part of the democratic process that people hear from all of us and be able to compare and contrast candidates and what they're voting for instead of just randomly going and pushing one button to vote for an R and a D. While we're out here and we're talking about our values that do typically line up on one side of the aisle or the other, but when we get into office, we pull that hat off and we go in to be a servant of the people, and we are there to argue for them and not to move the state right or left, but to move it forward. It has been an absolute honor representing the people of Fayette and Scott counties for the last 6 years, and I humbly ask for your vote on or before November 5th to continue fighting for you and your family.
Thank you so much. Mr. Moore.
Yes, also so happy to have the opportunity to be a part of this today. And I think so much that's important for people is that elections are about choices. And so I'm someone who cares about Kentucky instead of culture wars. And I want to make sure that the people watching this know that's a big difference between my opponent. And I laid out today how I want to work on the cost of living and support Kentucky's working families versus my opponent, who not only isn't here, but also has deleted the issues page off his website. I'm someone who cares about a woman's reproductive rights, especially in cases of rape, incest, non-viability, whereas he has gone on a record that he supports Kentucky law that criminalizes a woman's choice in all of those exception positions. The choice is going to be pretty clear. I look forward to winning the 45th and representing, as Representative Stevenson said, everyone in the 45th, not just those of a certain party, but every single person, and hopefully being a good servant for our people in Frankfort. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Houlihan.
Make sure. Okay, fantastic. I look forward to serving every one of you. Okay, just like I served every one of you at Lowe's. I don't make a differentiation between folks, people. Okay. Number two, let me sum up the choice. I stand for service before self. That is how I was raised. I have worked 30 years doing various kids programs. Ryan Dawson has been self-serving, getting like 800,000 in PPP loans in the last couple of years. And then he turns around and he basically tries to defund unemployment. My goal is to protect you and your children. Service to others is the greatest form of love. That is what the Bible teaches us. With more than 26 years at Lowe's, I love my job. I love the people I work with. I love my customers. Folks, you can have somebody who is self-serving or someone who has their eyes on you.
Thank you, Mr. Houlihan. Thank you. And Miss Fields.
Thank you all so much, Liza and the League of Women. I'm truly honored to be here to ask for your support as we try and will win the 17th district. I am someone who believes in meeting people where they are. I come to this being able to specialize in bridging across differences. And I come to this race as a daughter, an aunt, and an educator who firmly believes in building a commonwealth that works for the next generation of Kentuckians. Being at the door, one of the things that I say is that when you run for office, you have both heartbreak and joy that is occupying the same space. And that is something that is important to always remember, that I'm coming to this race, I'm coming to being a senator, understanding that we are dealing with matters of life and death. We're dealing with how are we helping to grow and address the issues of everyday Kentuckians so that they can thrive and help build our healthier, stronger, and prosperous communities. And so I'm committed to supporting and being a part of that solution for the next generation of Kentuckians. Thank you all.
Thank you. And thanks to all of our candidates for participating today. Very insightful and valuable conversations to be had for all of our voters to consider. If you are interested in League membership, which is open to both women and men, please check out the website at lwvlexington.com and make sure to make a plan to vote. You can look for additional information from the candidates on vote411.org. That's also a good one-stop shop to find your polling places, etc. Early voting is available to any registered voter on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday immediately before General Election Day. This year, it's October 31st, November 1st, November 2nd, at any of the 6 public library locations in Lexington from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Election Day itself is Tuesday, November the 5th, and polls will be open from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Please bring your driver's license or any qualifying ID, and please note that you can actually vote at any of the libraries on Election Day this year as well. Thank you so very much for joining us.